For about 600 years, the Khmer Empire of Angkor was without a doubt the dominant power in Southeast Asia. And at its very heart, this civilization created some of the most spectacular monuments the world has ever seen. So in this explainer, we're going to dig into the unique ideas, the beliefs, and the social structures that made it all happen.
I mean, just look at this. This is Angkor Wat. It stretches across almost 500 acres. To this day, it is still the largest religious structure on the entire planet. It's a masterpiece of architecture, sure, but it's also a national symbol and just a profound statement of pure power.
But when you look at it, it just begs the question, how, right? How did a kingdom 1,000 years ago manage to get the resources, the people, and just the sheer will to create something on this mind-boggling scale? What was the engine that was driving this incredible civilization forward?
Well, the answer really begins with the first pillar of Angkorian society, a very unique and incredibly powerful idea of what a king was. See, to really get Angkor, you first have to understand its king, who was seen as, well, a lot more than just a mortal ruler.
And at the very core of this was the cult of the Devaraja, which literally means king of the gods. This was established all the way back in 802 CE, and it was the ideological bedrock of the king's power. It wasn't just a political system, it was a state religion that directly connected the monarch to the Hindu god Shiva. So the king's authority, it didn't come from the people, it came straight from the heavens.
The king's power really came from three distinct but overlapping roles. First up, he was an earth spirit. As a direct manifestation of Shiva, people believed he was personally responsible for the kingdom's prosperity. You know, for the soil being fertile, for the life-giving monsoon rains actually showing up. The king's health was the land's health.
Second, the king had to be an epic hero. He was expected to be this living superlative, almost like a performer, constantly acting out these grand scenes of godlike power and virtue that were pulled from classic Indian epics. And these big public rituals, they weren't just for show. They were believed to secure actual divine blessings for the entire kingdom.
And third, of course, was the king's more practical role as a political patron. He was the center of this huge, complicated web of responsibilities. He's the one handing out titles, granting land, making sure the irrigation canals worked, acting as the final court of appeal, and managing foreign policy. He was, for all intents and purposes, the CEO of the entire empire.
So, you've got this immense three-part power. But how does a king actually make that divine authority visible? Well, that brings us to our second pillar. Let's see how they did it, through monumental engineering that literally reshaped the land itself.
Angkor's massive construction projects really fell into two main types, and each one served a totally critical purpose. On one hand, you had these enormous reservoirs for the very practical job of keeping a massive population alive, and on the other, you had these towering temple mountains built for pure, powerful religious symbolism.
So these reservoirs, they were called barays, and they were just incredible feats of hydraulic engineering. I mean, the biggest one was over 6 kilometers long. These were not just ponds, they were the absolute lifeblood of the empire, managing water on an industrial scale to irrigate these huge rice fields that fed hundreds of thousands of people.
Now, the other side of this building obsession was all about symbolism. These amazing temple mountains, they weren't just places to pray. They were meant to be earthly copies of Mount Meru, the mythical, cosmic home of the Hindu gods. So by building one right in the center of his city, the king was physically putting himself and his entire kingdom at the absolute center of the universe.
Okay, so a divine king and these heavenly construction projects are one thing, but who actually did all the work? I mean, who was lifting the stones? This brings us to our third and final pillar, the highly layered social structure that supplied the labor, the resources, and the unwavering loyalty needed to build a civilization like this.
To give you a sense of just how intense this system was, just listen to this. This is a line from a loyalty oath that officials had to swear. They pledged that if they ever broke their vow, they'd suffer in the deepest of 32 hells for all eternity. I mean, this was not just a promise, it was a soul-binding contract. But if you honored it, you were rewarded with land, food, and of course, power.
So society was organized into this very clear pyramid. At the absolute peak, you have the divine king. Right below him were the high officials and powerful priests who actually ran the kingdom. Then you have the broad base, made up of free villagers and rice farmers. And then, at the very bottom, were the temple slaves.
And what's so amazing is that we can actually see how the elite set themselves apart, because it's carved right into the temple walls. These carvings, these bas-reliefs, they give us a window into their world. You can see the intricate hairstyles, the fancy jewelry, the fine clothes, all of it marking their high status.
And the people who made it all possible were the Nyam, the temple slaves. They were the ones doing the essential, back-breaking work that supported the temples, the priests, and the entire elite class. As one scholar so perfectly put it, they were living in the vicinity of grandeur, providing the very foundation that this whole glittering structure was built on. So, let's bring these three pillars together. You've got a king who is basically a god on earth. You have a massive building program designed to recreate heaven itself, and you have a social structure that's organized from top to bottom for unwavering loyalty. What do you get when you combine all of that?
You get Angkor Wat. You get this. It is the ultimate physical expression of this entire system we've been talking about. It's so much more than a temple or tomb. It's the perfect fusion of divine ideology, incredible engineering, and a society that was completely mobilized by a shared, powerful belief.
Which kind of leaves us with one final thought. Angkor shows us exactly what happens when a society's whole worldview, its collective belief in the power of its gods and its king, is so potent, so strong, that it can organize hundreds of thousands of people to move millions of tons of stone and turn a spiritual idea into a physical and truly enduring reality.